Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat 1 video on the channel. And now we're doing a little more face stuff today. I will be doing these quite a bit, but rest assured, the more high quality edited stuff you've all come to know me by still will be featuring on the channel. It's just that this sort of stuff is actually a lot easier to edit, thus I can actually feed you more content with things I believe are worth talking about. Now of course, it's only been a few days since we had the goddamn incredible reveal of Mortal Kombat 1. And since then, so many questions have kind of come out of it. What's going on in the story mode? What exactly is the Kameo system? What is the main premise of this story? How are the endings intertwined? Are they intertwined? Who knows? There's simply so many different ideas and variables on the table. But with that said, and me having covered this series since 2015, today I wanted to kind of talk about the trailer myself and discuss my own personal thoughts and feelings on it, the things I like and look really promising, and other aspects of the story, or I suppose kind of lack of right now, but I'm kind of worried about, because I see a lot of stuff kind of floating around about this, but I do want to talk about and I feel was worth discussing. First off, let's talk about visual. And of course, it's Nether Realm Studios. You kind of know what you're getting yourself into. It's gonna be a visual masterpiece and spectacle. Nether Realm have kind of knocked this out of the park with every generation they've been a part of. Whilst the games haven't visually aged too well, for their time, they were really damn good. With Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat 11 really being what cemented their legendary use of what could be seen as an inferior engine. For those of you who don't know, Nether Realm have historically used Unreal Engine 3, which in the current state of the industry could be seen as super out of date. But the team is talented enough to create a fantastic visual spectacle, with MK11 showing how far they can push that technology. So on a graphical fidelity side of things, I have full faith in the studio to deliver something just amazing. Now moving aside from the graphical side of things, I did actually want to touch on the character design and how much I really like what I see so far. Like those Scorpion and Sub-Zero designs are just fantastic. They're very streamlined, with beautiful use of colour, and I'm also a huge fan of the new look for Kitana and Mileena, as I really wasn't a fan of Kitana's design for Mortal Kombat 11. The bodysuit to me just didn't radiate any personality, and in my opinion, was a really big downgrade from what we saw in Mortal Kombat X as well as Mortal Kombat 9, as those designs kind of had some Edenian influence in them that kind of added a form of personality to her upfront design. As for Mileena, we don't really see too much of her here, but I like what I see so far. We're definitely gonna have to see a little bit more before I have anything else to say about it, but so far so good. As for the designs of Liu Kang, Raiden and Kung Lao, these three look very simple in their designs, but I think that helps separate them from the ninjas in the series. The only bad thing I find right now is that Raiden's design may be a bit too plain here, because Liu Kang's tattoos and eyes light up whenever he's utilizing his abilities. Kung Lao has his crest embedded on his design, while still retaining his signature hat, and Raiden doesn't really have the same hat. Plus, he looks completely different from his MK11 design, so I do hope there are some other costumes to pick from, because this design so far, it just kind of lacks a little bit of personality. But again, that could purposely be done to kind of show and emphasize that he's mortal now. He doesn't want the extravagant appearance of a god, and maybe even retain a pacifist role. That's definitely theory crafting on my part. However, it's still an interesting idea I want to throw out into the ether. And now we move on to story. And in terms of premise, it's very interesting. It's not entirely what I had expected, as it was kind of built on the shoulders of the great Kung Lao ending, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. Not that this is necessarily a bad thing. I will say, I'm pretty open with seeing different narrative threads in Mortal Kombat being explored in creative and useful ways. And whilst I'm really not a fan of time travel anymore, I think with how Mortal Kombat 11 wrapped up, I think it just needed that fresh slate. Because MK9 to X basically set up the status quo of oh look, we're rebooting the entire timeline, but doing it slightly different, which naturally led to many expectations for Mortal Kombat 11 with Deadly Alliance. Something that did of course not come. Is it unfortunate? Absolutely. Because there's definitely a demand when it comes to fan expectations and how you more or less lay out your story than the one we kind of got there. So in that sense, I'm glad they're doing a fresh start and giving us completely new stories, opposed to the same stuff we've seen before, but slightly repackaged for a modern audience. Plus, with so much expansive lore, prior to Midway's fall, there's really a lot of content there that could either convolute or interfere with a modern day interpretation of the game. For example, the Titans and the One Being. We do have to remember, the writers we have now aren't the same writers we had from the original series of games. Thus, new and different creative minds behind the steering wheel won't have the same map or ideas that did come previously, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think a reboot is needed just so going forward will enable a more clear-cut story, which again is something Mortal Kombat needed. Especially after the comics were retconned, so some things that did make sense and then some things that didn't make sense. You see how it kind of all gets jumbled and problematic. I think a reboot was a necessary evil here. And I do really like how they are reimagining characters here. Because I gotta cut it to you, Chief, there's only so many times you can kill Scorpion's family so many ways. So I am happy they've done that. With that being said, I can see why some are upset, because many feel like they are disregarding the older timeline, like they never existed. But truth be told, just because they're restarting it, doesn't mean that those games never came to be. Let's not forget the foundation that those games laid out for the series. They did a lot in many different ways, and just because they are starting on a fresh slate here, doesn't mean that those events didn't happen. Let's not forget to take into account the influences and references that did come from the original timeline, and did influence the reboot timeline. Those events did happen, and could very well follow through and influence Mortal Kombat 1 with how its storytelling does unfold. Just now, done in a different way. I understand why people are worried, but I also think they might be jumping the gun a little bit too soon. Wait for more news to come out, just to see what's going on here. Anywho, moving back to some other story bits, what are my current thoughts on the immersive story mode? As there are some slight hint and clues, like a choose your destiny, foreshadowed by Liu Kang. We don't know how this affects the overall greater narrative, but it does look like Nether Realm are moving their games forward in a different way than what we have seen before. I do believe that this is in partial response to players kind of growing tired of the chapter system, possibly getting something a little bit more freeing with how they approach their games moving forward. Again, details are kind of sketchy, but taking into account they've had about 4 or more years to really put time into this game, I'm just interested to see how this all pays off, especially with last week's trailer being very different from what we had seen before, as Ed did mention that the intention of this trailer was to put the lore at the heart of it all. So we gotta wait and see. Now on to our final topic here, gameplay. And there's not really much to say, at least not right now. Looking at you, PlayStation Showcase, with the very little details we have here, I have to say, I'm so happy that we're possibly getting a new combat system. The Kameo system. Now that's not to say I didn't enjoy Variations. I actually super enjoyed Variations, because I thought they were done exceptionally well for Mortal Kombat 11, with each one kind of radiating their own personality. But with Mortal Kombat 11, the variation system kind of felt lost for a while, with set loadouts opposed to the freedom of creating your own. And of course, when it comes to creating your own variations, you get some real broken shit. In the long run, it kind of became problematic, and I really don't blame the team for wanting to step away from that, because I imagine balancing each and every move must be an absolute nightmare. Thus, I think this change is good and healthy, and it is actually something we've all been asking for. Currently, we don't know how in-depth the tag team mode / mechanic is going to work here, as it looks to be more of a tag assist fighter, like Marvel vs. Capcom 1 from what I hear. Unfortunately, I have no experience with that game, so I can't really say much about it myself, but I do like the sound of that. Especially the fact that there's going to be 2 different rosters for the game, with the first being a base roster, and then the Kameo roster, which from what I understand is basically the assist roster. I want to have a real or proper opinion on it till we actually see it in motion. But so far, I'm very excited to see something new. And hey, with bigger and larger rosters, means that we can get back a lot more of the Lost Legacy characters. Something that I know a lot of you 3D players have been chomping at the bit to see. I'm genuinely quite interested to see how a modernized interpretation of what like Li Mei, Havoc, or Natara would look. However, there's always kind of the caveat of this, being that the characters that appear on the base roster and characters that appear on the Kameo roster aren't playable in their entirety. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. So in summary of everything that we have here, my current thoughts on Mortal Kombat 1 is that it couldn't be a more exciting time to be a Mortal Kombat fan. I think this serves as a great entry for newer fans, as well as something similar but different for older returning Legacy fans. Honestly, I'm gonna frame it like this. With how it's laid out, this seems like the perfect requel for Mortal Kombat fans. Similar yet different, with new added layers that are inherently built on the foundation of the past Legacy. And as I pointed out on the channel, Legacy is important, so I'm glad in some ways that's being acknowledged, but being explored in different ways. Because again, I'm not a huge fan of reboots, but I'd much rather see something new be done with the series than just redoing the events of Mortal Kombat 1 to 3 again. Like, we gotta let it go. I know that's like the golden age for the series, but we can only paint and redo that era so many times before it's just overdone. And with it having existed for over 30 years, I think this is the step the series needs to take. So things are looking very bright for the franchise moving forward, and if anything, I just want to learn more about it. We're only 4 months away now, so honest to God, I just want to see what's on the horizon now. But with that said, everyone, that's been it for me. Please, down in the comments below, let me know what you currently think about NetherRealm's approach to restarting the franchise, reimagining the characters, and of course, the new Kameo fighting system. Because I really am excited to see what the future holds as a big-time Mortal Kombat fan that wants something fresh, but still loves the legacy and history of the series. But anyway, guys, that's been it for me. So now, as always, everyone, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting as we all eagerly await the release of Mortal Kombat 1. Take care, everyone. I'll see you all soon.